Welcome to I'm Nature. I'm your host, Brian Porter, and this week I have an update from Mumta, leader of the Rights of Nature movement in Europe, and also a regular guest on my show, David Dene, Eco Village developer, and also a Rights of Nature participant. And I think he's somewhat of a ringleader for Mumta over there in Europe, but we'll get that straightened out. So, welcome to the show, Mumta and David.
Great, very nice to be back on the show again, Brian. Thanks very much. Great. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, thank you, David. And Mumta, welcome.
Hi. Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
So, what's new with the Rights of Nature movement in Europe, Mumta?
Right. Okay. Well, several things have been moving. At the moment, it's very much about raising the profile of the issue, about growing our teams, growing our networks. One new development is that organically somebody approached us saying that he feels inspired to cycle from one end of Europe to another to raise awareness for rights of nature. So we've launched this pan-European cycle ride, and it's been absolutely fantastic. He's been on national TV in Croatia, and he's bringing on board NGOs and alliances of NGOs. We have now partnered with us a network that's a coalition of all of the environmental NGOs in Slovenia, and they actually informed us that they had also been thinking, albeit independently, about how could we bring in the Bolivian ideas of rights of nature into a European framework, and then they came across us. So this is just one example of the momentum that's building up on the ground.
Yeah. Hey, Mumta, could you give us a quick recap, because there's some of us listening here probably are not very familiar with the Bolivian situation and the remarkable work that's being done in Bolivia, and how the government of Bolivia is really caring for the nature. I think that could be a point we could expand on that a little bit. What do you think?
Yeah, sure. I can give a little background for those listeners who don't know what rights of nature is. Well, it's a game-changing solution. It brings fundamental and systemic change to our legal and our economic system by recharacterizing nature, which is ecosystems, species, and the atmospheric climate, as a subject of the law with tangible rights like you and I that can be defended in court by people. And this is a far cry from what's happening in the world today, where nature is treated as an object and human beings are seen by the law as being separate to nature, without being in relationship to nature. And what this leads to is a piecemeal system of protection that is reactive. So in the environmental movement, we're always trying to stop things using a system of law that only provides pockets of protection here and there. So we have vast swathes of nature that are not really covered by the legal system. So take, for example, endangered species. We're in the midst of the sixth mass extinction, scientists say. We're losing, 10 to 12 species a day. Well, the way the law works at the moment, because nature is an object, there's no protection, so environmental law carves out protections for endangered species. Now, this is a little bit like having a rose bush and saying we're going to protect that rose on the bush as it's withering and dying away, but it's okay to attack the rest of the plant. And so you see, this system is not really adequate, and also the functioning of it. It relies on being able to accurately predict which species are under threat at any given time. This takes years of scientific research, and the time that it takes to update these schedules that say which species are protected, it's already too late because we're losing 10 to 12 species a day. So this is the kind of situation that we have with biodiversity. And then if we look at other areas of environmental law, like, the things like fracking, for example. Or the situation that David has in Almeria. What we're looking at here is a system of law that is dealt with exclusively by the planning courts. So all environmental issues are deemed to be planning issues because nature is either property or it's fair game. And so what this means is that ordinary people are not empowered to bring cases. Firstly, even if there is standing to bring a case, then the only case that can be brought is whether the planners followed the correct procedure. And very often this is a box-ticking exercise. If they're asked to do an environmental assessment, it's just necessary that they did one.
Yeah, not so much what's in it, you mean?
Exactly. And if we have laws that favour certain practices, like the irrigation of olive plantations, and it's not illegal for these people to be using the water supply in order to do that, then there's not really a lot that people can do.
Can I just come in for just a moment on that, Mumta, with what we're saying about the olive plantations and the fact that it is so difficult to do anything? Because what I'd like to say about this one is that, yeah, everything you say we've been going through over the last, I think now we're 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 months. So luckily we've been able to move very quickly. And for all you listeners, we're speaking about a situation in Western Europe, in southeastern Spain. We're fully part of the European Union. We've got all the agreements with the European Union for the maintenance of ecosystems and the protection. And our particular system is under some of the highest protections in Europe. And we found that they don't work because the national government of Spain hasn't got sufficient competence or ability to work with these directives from the European Commission to protect the environment in Spain with the agreements that they've signed with the European Commission. And to put that a different way, the Spanish government have signed agreements that they will look after areas of special interest to the European Union for special rare habitats and for protection of birds. And I'm physically living, my home is in one of these areas, and we're talking about the water being taken away by industrial agriculture. And just go a little bit more with the story. I don't want to kind of bore you or take too much time. I want to kind of be as clear as I can on this.
You're not boring anyone, David. It's an excellent point.
Yeah, okay. Addressing Mumta's point here, because it's very, very real. It's very correct. We've been working on the national level, which of course we think that's the first level to work on, because we would imagine that that is where the protections are going to be enforced and we are going to be protected. I've been living in this area for 26 years, and I expect a lot of you listening out there have watched spaghetti westerns like, John Wayne maybe, and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Now, these films were filmed in my backyard. So when you watch those movies, you can actually see where I'm living. It's kind of interesting, that. And then when you look at that and you see the semi-arid zone, the only one in Western Europe, and then put your imagination and imagine 5,000 hectares of irrigated olive trees in that terrain. And if you can get your imaginations from this dry land, which you see in the movies, to 5,000 hectares, now that's 10,000 acres. And you can see from the movies, it doesn't rain here. So the water for those olives comes from underground water. And since it doesn't rain here, then that underground water doesn't get recharged or refilled. And I live in a little valley, which is a little bit lower than some of the other areas. And this underground water has been flowing into our valley since Neolithic times, because we got Neolithic cave paintings a bit further up the valley. It's an oasis in our desert. Industrial agriculture is taking the water. So that gives you a framework, a simple framework of what's happening. We've got 5,000 hectares of olive trees. We live in a semi-arid zone. We're full protection. I'm in a Parque Naturale, everything under full European protections. So I applied to the European government. We've had a question asked in the European Parliament. And also I did what's called here in Europe a denounce to the European Union, denouncing them for failure to observe to enforce the directives of protection of the environment in a nation state. The two replies I've had back, one from the European Parliament and one from the body which deals with denouncements, we call them when we denounce somebody. In both sections of the Commission, they say, yes, you are right, David, this is true. But we have all over Spain a similar problem, and we are going to write to Spain in the future. So we can see this picks up Mumta's words, which is so true. And I have the experience of the truth of those words, that we at the moment are unable to have the directives which are put forward from the European Commission, to have them actually functioning in a nation state which is incompetent or doesn't wish to observe them. So that is one strong point for why we do need to have rights for nature, so that the way this is like going a little bit on with Mumta's idea, and I'm sure Mumta will come in and talk a little bit about this, is that we see that large companies, international companies, let's use a really big one like Monsanto, because that's a glaring example of monster company, who have lawyers and lawyers and lawyers and lawyers and more lawyers to find environmental cracks in environmental legislation, so that they can then own that land and trash that land. I use the word, trash it, because basically that's what happens. Because the land is owned by the multinational corporation, or rented or used. Now, if we give that land its sense of personhood, in the same way that Monsanto is given a sense of personhood and is allowed to donate to American funds for elections, such like, now if we give nature personhood, then it would seem to be a good idea for the nation state then to be able to, in a court of law, supply, not able to, as a must, to supply a lawyer to protect the nature which has got its legal entity and its personhood in the face of abuse, so that we don't have to do, I repeat that, we don't have to do what I am having to do and we are having to do, which is to go to the human rights, the High Commission of Human Rights in Geneva, the United Nations, to say, we now, because the European Union's protection is not working, we have to go to the level of protection of that we are faced with a human right abuse. Now, the human rights legal system, if we are not living in a safe and sustainable environment, and that is caused by the actions of a nation state as Spain, then we have the right to go to the special rapporteur on the right of human beings, fundamentally, a fundamental right to have a safe and sustainable environment. And I was able to do that, and I was able to write to the special rapporteur for sustainable and safe environment. His name is John Knox, and his mandate is the world. And so he has taken under his world mandate our situation in Almeria province, because we have no recourse to existing law we are not getting a result. Recourse, I said we do not have a recourse. We do, but the law, in our experience in Almeria and in Mumta's wide experience, is not adequate to protect the nature that we have. So, Mumta, over to you. That was quite a long aside.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for that, David. It's always good to have a practical example where somebody's experiencing some of these difficulties to put it into context. Before I continue with explaining a bit more about rights of nature, just an aside on international law. We have so many laws and international treaties, and it all looks very good. But when you come down to reading the small print of these things, you find with the international law system, member states of the UN, they sign up to these conventions and they sign up to these treaties, but there's no body to actually enforce them. So here again, we're relying on goodwill and naming and shaming and, hey, you signed up to this, come on, pull your socks up. But if the country decides, actually I'm just going to do something, that's lip service, there's nobody to actually enforce and make them do anything.
Exactly, Mumta. That's exactly what we're finding. Exactly that.
Precisely. And, even like we have this sham, sorry if I, to be so forthright with my opinion on it, but we say we have access to justice on environmental issues under the Aarhus Convention. So here, we have the AHAS directive, and it gives NGOs, not ordinary people like you and I, but NGOs, the right to ask for information. And I believe, David, you've gone through that process. You've not really gotten any information.
Okay, we're in it. It's the Aarhus Convention, and then we applied to the non-compliance board of the Aarhus Convention. Then they will work with the situation in a non-confrontational manner over a period of 6 months, and then we will look for the 3 pillars of the Aarhus Convention, one of which is justice.
Right. So access to justice on environmental issues. This is, again, NGOs. And here in Scotland, for example, one of the major hurdles is the cost. There are at present, there isn't a system for protected costs. So it's so costly for communities to fund an NGO to bring a case. And again, we're talking about bringing the case on the grounds that there was some problem in the decision-making process. So we're not shifting the whole thing to actually look at the macro of what's going on in this situation and how equitable it is, because there's no legal basis for that. The only thing, this is just getting access to be able to bring a case, and the case can only be brought on technicalities that the correct procedure wasn't followed. So we're sort of, it's almost as if the law has kind of tied itself up in knots, and we're going round in this maze, and in the meantime, the ecosystem's getting destroyed while we're trying to have conversations. Now, I know lawyers who've been actively involved in working the AHAS system, and what I've heard is that, this non-confrontational procedure means, in practice, a closed-doors conversation between somebody in the AHAS office in the commission and some person in the member state. Yeah. And he just gets a letter back saying it's being dealt with.
And it probably isn't. Or?
Well, his experience has been that the problem is still remaining the same. So here, we have a kind of smokes and mirrors effect. I see a lot of parallels with GDP, where you can tear down a house and rebuild it, and it adds to the GDP, but it doesn't actually add to society. And in a similar way, we can say, oh, yes, the law's dealing with all of this, but it just puts us into a big maze of procedures.
Yeah.
With very little outcome.
Okay, Mumta, can I just interject here? How would the rights of nature prevent the same thing from happening? This is the part of it that I don't quite understand, because we've seen in places like Ecuador where they had valid claims against big oil companies that basically destroyed the land and poisoned the people, and they've kept it in courts, and they're still fighting it for years.
Well, one has to look at Ecuador as its own example based on its own facts and its own. It's effectively, I would call it the equivalent of a dictator state. We have, we have a government which brought in rights of nature, put it in the Constitution, but they didn't actually put it in law. So with constitutional law, if we bring cases, we're dependent on the government enforcing it. And if that government are actually, from what I have heard, killing people who are trying to bring cases and warning judges that if they were to allow any cases for rights of nature, that they'd lose their jobs, and nobody as a counterbalance to that, then, so can rights of nature work in a dictator state that is not behind enforcing it? No. No law can, apart from the law, that the state wants to. So, yes, like with all laws, it relies on having proper mechanisms of accountability in place, so that if the governments are not doing what the law is saying that they should do, that the people can step forward. And I feel this is the biggest plus that rights of nature brings, is that it empowers people. It empowers people to stand for nature in a different way. We're not talking about property and about rules and regulations about making decisions around property.
Yeah.
We're talking about people being able to stand for the rights of an ecosystem, the rights of another species, because our law treats species as objects, but other species are not objects, they're living beings.
Yeah.
And this is the fundamental issue why we have the biodiversity crisis, for example.
Hey, Mumta, I'm sorry to stop you. Beautiful creative words. But I just wanted to go back a little bit. And this is the, how should we say, the devil's advocate here. Yeah, the devil's advocate. I'm not the devil. The concept that we have law for rights of nature law. Now, how are we going to get around the problems we've got in existing law in order to get that law action when there might not be a will to action that law? Do you see where I'm coming from? You know, are we creating more of the same, which is still going to be impossible to action because the powers here are not?
Okay, so let me explain a little bit more about the current governance system.
Thank you. Yeah.
So our current system of law, it's missing this overarching framework that puts our existence on the planet into its proper context, with the Earth system as being primary, and our systems, including our economic systems, as being derivative, being secondary, because
deriving from the
Earth economy. So at the moment, we have a system that treats, predominantly all the countries of the world run a capitalist system, and that treats the economy as primary. Human resources go in, natural resources go in, and products come out. And the more products, the better. And this is, so we end up depleting human beings, and we also end up depleting nature. And at the moment, we have this problem that, nature can't replenish itself enough to keep up with the system. So what we're talking about with rights of nature, by bringing in nature as a stakeholder in its own right, is providing an overarching framework that puts our existence on the planet in its proper context. So we have the Earth, of which human society is a subset, and
Dave, you're breaking up, but it's okay. Keep going, Mumta.
Have that in our laws. There is no legal requirement for governments to formulate policies that prioritize the health of ecosystems and to integrate this requirement across all the levels and sectors of society. So environmental decisions are made exclusively on the micro level under individual planning cases. There's no regard for the cumulative effect, and so forth. So when we're bringing in nature as a stakeholder with its own rights, this has to be accompanied. And you say if there's no political will, then, if there's no political will, we've got to step in. The people have got to step up and create the political will. We vote those politicians in. It's about time we told them what we want them to represent. So I think people really, there needs to be a massive shift in consciousness of people, a shift in awareness of how the capitalist system itself, without, an overarching framework that puts our existence in the planet in its proper context, where, it's imperfect. So in Bolivia, what they've done is they brought in the rights of nature, so recognizing, that the human being is one part of a greater ecosystem, and recognizing this in law, also granting rights, tangible rights, to ecosystems, to the Earth as a whole, recognizing that the Earth is one indivisible ecosystem comprised of many, many living systems that work in tandem with each other. So it gives the Earth itself rights, ecosystems rights, species rights, and what it's also done is created an alternative economic framework that operates in harmony with nature. So without transitioning economics, rights of nature, it's not just, it's one recharacterization, but it's then is accompanied by a whole framework of changes to give effect to it, to give practical effect to it. And part of that is transitioning our economic system into a system of economics that operates in harmony with nature. And if there's no political will, it's got to come from the people.
Yeah.
It's not going to come from the vested interests.
How are we going to do it? Actually, just to tell you listeners how we are, Mumta and I have been working together since I met Mumta back in January 2013, was it, Mumta?
Yeah.
In Quito, Ecuador. We were both attending Global Summit Conference for the Rights of Nature. seeing what we can do as a group of people united around the world to protect the nature, protect the planet, because really when we come together as a group of really seriously interested people who are aware of the danger we're in, we saw and found together that we are in very serious trouble. And it does seem that the way to get out of this serious trouble is to give nature her own right to survive. If we don't give ourselves the right to survive, as we do, the human right to survive, then we die. And if we don't give nature the right to survive, nature supports us. Therefore, again, we die. Now, that's such a new message for so many of us living on the planet, that we have to support and look after the nature, because if we don't, we are going to be damaged. We are going to die. And then what we need to do is to put this message across, not with this point of doom and gloom, but the way of looking at what we're doing, the sense of adventure, excitement, new paradigm, a new way of looking at life, a way of life that is the reverse of the capitalism, the type of capitalism that we've become involved with, which is greedy and for me. And when we look at nature, we see the exact opposite. And what we're doing in our economic system is running a system which is the exact opposite of nature, where the capital of the water then comes into the plant, which creates the seeds, and 1 million seeds will come from the plant, which is spread all over the land. And so the capital of water is spread into the capital of seeds, which is then spread over the land, and there is more and more and more and more for everybody. And right now, we have a very small number of people. We've talked to 1%, and less than that 1% own 50% of planet Earth. Now, that is not natural or of nature in any way. And that is holding a massive amount of energy, which is not being released to benefit humankind. What do you think of those words, Brian and Mumta?
Yeah, absolutely. I quite agree. I quite agree. I mean, we are interdependent. We've reached a state where if nature gets any more seriously further depleted, scientists are saying that, there is a phenomenon in nature where ecosystems flip state, and it could flip state into a state that will not host human life. So we're really talking here, when we talk about rights of nature, we're talking about our rights. We're talking about our right to life. And we're talking also about protecting life, protecting life itself. And one of the things, David, I heard you talking about capital. And I really, I personally am not really a fan of the concept of nature capital, because with rights of nature, we're, what we're looking at is valuing nature in and of itself, because in nature, the currency is life.
Yes, it is.
It's not money, it's life.
Okay. I mean the capital of life. I'm using capital, not in the money term.
So we've got to get away from even using the term capital, I feel.
So give us a new term. What is the new term?
Life.
Wow.
The living essence of water, the living essence of seeds, the life-giving properties of water and seeds.
Well, yeah, I mean...
Because how do we put a price on that? How do we value that in terms of a man-made concept called capital?
It's wrong. I'm using capital...
It's not right.
I'm using capital in the wide sense. The wide sense is very broad umbrella sense.
I know you are, David.
Cool.
I know you are. And recently I was giving a talk at the International Permaculture Conference on the subject rights of nature. And there I attended a side event, and it was this guy, I felt so irritated by the use of language that, I felt like I needed to walk out halfway, otherwise I was going to just explode at this guy. But he was basically talking about how we can take, all that life gives us and characterize it as capital.
Not right. That's wrong. We both know.
Precisely. And he was talking about the spiritual capital, and I was just thinking, enlightenment bonds. Can you? I can just see it. You know, I used to work as a structured finance lawyer, and at the moment they're creating financial instruments based on the things that nature provides for free. At the moment they're betting on clean air. They're betting on the price of clean air. And if you, I'm not joking. There's habitat. There's habitat banking. You know, so
habitat banking. Tell me how it's done.
Okay, so the banks are on to the fact that we're killing biodiversity at an alarming rate.
Thank God they understand.
So when things become scarce, they become valuable in monetary terms. So what banks are doing now is they're applying a similar concept to the carbon credit, you know, the carbon trading system.
Yeah, I know.
Cap and trade, they're applying that to biodiversity.
Wow.
And so they're saying, okay, so big business is now going to team up with Big Green. And, you know, some of the NGOs, even like WWF, have partnered with some of these organizations to set up conservation projects.
Okay.
And on the back of these projects, they're issuing certificates so that polluters, very often, you know, the same companies that are partnering to provide these credit scheme, polluters buy these credits. They don't need to change their ways. They can carry on polluting as long as they bought a mitigation credit.
Yeah, that is really bad.
And then these certificates can be traded in the secondary market. Now, when they go into the derivatives, they're traded, and they can be traded, you know, with like it has no relation to the original conservation project.
Yeah.
So when you go into the secondary market, you can be betting on something completely different. So you bet on prices going up or going down, and you can buy when they go up, and you know, sell when they go down, that sort of thing. You've got, you know. I mean, it's open for people to bet on the extinction date of species.
Well, that's immoral.
You know, we already have markets in clean air, in clean water. And now, it doesn't take a genius to work out that if I'm a huge fund and I'm heavily invested in the price of clean water going up, then what kind of activities am I going to put my money into? What sort of laws am I going to lobby for?
What a good point you make.
This is what we're facing at the moment. And Rights of Nature shifts all of this. It puts a real spanner in the works because one, it empowers people, ordinary people, decentralized, to start bringing cases left, right, and center to invoke the rights of nature. And it also values nature for its intrinsic value.
Good.
Not its monetary value.
Yeah,
because you can't.
In the works.
Because we can't replace nature. We can only work within it and create sustainable systems. And this is what's wrong with the whole understanding of nature right now. And it's what's wrong with our understanding of monetization, is that once you destroy an ecosystem, you can't buy it back, folks. This is one of the great aspects of nature. And this is why I'm a big fan of creating an organic currency, okay? A currency that would be used to help rejuvenate the planet, would create storehouses of seed and food in people's homes, would be used to support things like the rights of nature. Because once we reconnect with nature and we try to naturalize all systems, this is what's going to make it happen. Once we have a priority of nature first, then rights of nature, then governments. Like there's in Canada, Quebec, I don't know if you're familiar with too much of the environmental law in Quebec, but it's actually pretty progressive when you compare it to the rest of the planet. And it's not, a quote, official rights of nature, but I'll tell you, there's about 5 or 6 years ago, they instituted a law that said you cannot disrupt the natural foliage within 15 meters of any lake in the province. Well, I'll tell you right now, it really pissed off the cottage owners that they own this land and they were not allowed to disrupt it. But from what I've been told, there's been no way around it. And no matter how much money you have or how rich you are, you haven't been able to bribe officials to get around it. So these are the kinds of measures, like you say, you have to understand that nature cannot be replaced. It's beyond definition in terms of its monetary value. It's priceless. Okay.
Can I interrupt a little?
These are the concepts that we have to get into people's minds.
Yeah, I'd like to give you a little bit of an update on another action that we're just beginning to put together for Rights of Nature Europe, and it's a very interesting project put on by the European Commission, and it's called EYE, what did that stand for again? Mumta? Youth.
Yeah, it's the youth. Gosh, one moment.
You stand for
I'll find it. Anyway, it's a big forum for the youth at the UN. It's a huge conference where they're bringing together about 7,000 youth to propose different solutions to problems.
And we're putting a team forward. We've got 4 people coming from my part of the world. We've got Spanish and Portuguese people, and we're really getting some action on this, Mumta. We're really getting some action because I do believe that it's the young people who are going to make the biggest difference, because there are more young people on this planet than there are anybody else. And to get 7,000 dedicated young people together under the auspices of the European Commission to talk about where we go forward as a generation, I think is very, very exciting. And I
think it's hugely exciting, yes. And I agree with you, David, absolutely, that the young people tend to be a little bit more switched on because they're able to see that capitalism isn't working so well.
Yeah.
The spoils of it are not distributed amongst everybody by a long shot.
Absolutely.
They live in the age of the internet where they can see the conditions that whole countries are living under in other parts of the world, and they know instinctively it's not right.
Well, they know.
And they're not brainwashed into thinking that this is the only way. So, absolutely. I mean, they're the way forward. You know, the generation that has gone by, of course, not everybody. I mean, people like you, David, like me, like Brian, you know, we're all...
Along, yeah.
Yeah.
I was talking to a 20-year-old yesterday. I've known Arion is his name. I've known his family, known him since he was born. He's now 20, he's a young man. And they say, hey, Arion, what is it like being 20 today here in Spain? And, you know, he's a smiley, cheerful young man. And, you know, to put it bluntly, he says it's shit. Because there is no future. There's 60 to 70% of people, of students coming out of university. There is no work, there is no work, there is no work, there is no work. Now, this is the paradigm that we are moving into all over the world as mechanism takes over. There is no work, there is no work, there is no work. And what do the young people do when there is no work? Well, all of us listening, all of us listening to this program, there are going to be many of us who have children who are in their 20s. What are they doing? Now, you can look at the children, your children, our children. I have a very big extended family. And I talk to the young people who've my house has been an open house now for 17 years because we built it with the help of people from 16 different countries. And so I said when we finished building, this house is open to all of you and your families because I don't have enough money to pay you all. And my gift in return for all the energy you put in, like the United Nations in building my house in 9 months, it's a good gestation period for a house, always open. So over the last 17 years, I meet people from all over the world. And I find, and I can feel in the younger generation what's going on. And I think that in our Rights of Nature movement, now is the time when we can address the young people and say, hey, young people, don't be young anymore, be adult and choose. And what we can do as the older generation is to point the direction. Mumta, excellent in the whole aspect of why it doesn't work, and so brilliant in coming forwards and putting something for all of us to follow. Thank you, Mumta, for taking the stand, saying, yes, I demand that we make a difference. And this is one woman, this is Mumta Ito, who stands up and says, yes, I will do it. And then what we do is to follow and support Mumta in any way we can. And when we have people all over who can understand that this is the situation, then we have people who take Mumta's flag and then run ahead of Mumta because she started it, and then the people run with that banner.
Absolutely.
This is so exciting. And the first point where we're at now is to...
Well, can I make a point, David, before you get off? Just a practical suggestion. When people tell you there's nothing to do, you say, oh, you've got it all wrong. There's so much to do, it's not funny. The planet is on the tipping point. If you're unemployed, do something in the Rights of Nature movement. Pick up, do some volunteer work to promote and save this planet.
Yeah, I totally agree. I was really talking within the paradigm of what people are educated about, which is to go to work and make money by going to work and by consuming.
Yeah, but we can take advantage of this breakdown in the
I know
system.
what you're saying, Brian, that this is a huge opportunity. The mass unemployment, because they've got nothing else to do, they can put all their energy into shifting the system.
And making it work for them. Making it work for them, too, at the same time.
Yeah, but we haven't found a way to do that. We know from our point of view, yes, but have we found a way to get these young people enrolled? No. That's what we need to do, because we can mind and talk about it, make mind talks about it, but to actually get to that 20-year-old and say, hey, guys, come on. And so for Arian, he said, yeah, I'm going off to Germany. I say, great, good man. For others in my house, we say, okay, we're going to go to this youth project. They say, yeah. And I say to them, now, this is your project, your responsibility, your choice. And what you do as an individual, and you stand for what you believe in, because we're all living in an ecocide around my home. And that kills us. And this is a kind of ecocide that can never, ever be undone, because the water being extracted is millions of years old and will never be recharged. And when we're faced with that in our backyard, the attention that we have to nature is many degrees higher. So the 4 young people in my house, they go to that meeting and they know what they're talking about. And when we get people all over the world who can take it on because of their personal experience, we have some power for good and change.
Yeah, David, I just have another practical suggestion. When you meet these people who say, I can't get a job, you say, hey, I'm trying to create a huge support list of people for the Rights in Nature movement in Europe. It's being led by a brilliant woman named Mumta and other lawyers. Can you help me recruit people who are unemployed? Because this is the solution, because everything in the future has to be naturalized. All the economies have to be naturalized. It's going to create a lot of jobs to do this kind of work.
I totally agree, Brian. Yeah, I'm looking.
Don't let them off the hook. We're letting people off the hook. We're letting people say, oh, there's no solution. And that is the beginning of the solution, is to make them realize solutions exist.
I have many people. I've probably had about 30 to 35 people visiting and coming through my house in the last 5 days. Unbelievable. But people just like to come. And so when they say, I say, look, someone says, what can I do to help? I say, the first thing you need to do is to deeply ground in your heart what is going on. You need details, you need facts, you need to feel it, and then you need to feel who you are and feel your individual gifts and come with those gifts to protect nature, because this is the most important task we have on planet Earth, and it's most important because we're looking after the possibility of future life on the planet, or the possibility of a lot less life on the planet. So at my age, certainly, I feel that this is the most important thing that I can be doing in my life. And I'm really enjoying doing it, because I am enabled by Brian, by you, by Mumta, by you, to be here and to have the privilege to talk to people over Canada, over America, over the world, and be privileged to be able to speak my heart and my feeling, because it's wonderful. It's a privilege. I'm out of words.
David, one thing I want to add to what you were saying about, we don't know how to reach all these people. I think just by the example of other young people stepping up and doing something, like our man Alex, who came out of nowhere and said, I want to cycle from one end of Europe to another with a banner, and get in touch with people all along the way, spreading awareness about rights of nature.
Yeah, I think it's great.
He's hugely inspired people. Even our administrator went to go and cycle with him because she felt so inspired, and she went and cycled with him for 2 weeks. And she said that through the experience of cycling with him, she really realized, how generous the universe is, and how much support, how people resonate from their hearts, especially when they see somebody enduring hardship to get the message out.
That is so good, Mumta. I agree with you 100%. I think it's in actions. In actions. Well done.
And I think, when people see one person doing it, then they think, oh, well, he's doing that. I didn't think about that, but you know what? Maybe I can.
Cool. Well, I think that's right. I think that's 100%. I'm going not a bit too deep. What my words will fit one person or some people. What you're saying will fit more people. more people, sure.
And I've also come across lawyers, like, I'm one person, I had, an idea, this is brilliant what they're doing in Bolivia, let's see what we can do here in Europe. And I've had so many people, and people keep approaching me, academics, lawyers, and they start to get inspired that, oh yeah, maybe we can actually start to think out of the box, rather than thinking inside the box. And so, with each person who's brave enough to say things that are unconventional.
Yeah, that's the one.
The unconventional truth.
Yeah, that's the one, Mumta. I think we're getting pretty good at being unconventional, no? And Brian also.
Unconventional is the truth, Mumta.
Brian, I am nature. We are all nature. That nature aspect will start coming up like mycelium, everywhere.
Mycelium.
Well, we are nature. I mean, it's ontological and it's tautological. It's beyond denial. We are nature.
We are, exactly. It's the truth. It may be an unconventional truth for some people, but it is true. And and with rights of nature, that's all we're saying. We're saying I am nature,
Yeah.
Actually, a huge part of my own rights are being denied. You've given me one portion of my rights, and you've called it human rights.
Yeah.
But actually, I want all of them. I want my right to exist and thrive because it's interdependent with all of the other beings on the planet.
And so what we've got to do is to enroll our friends, our fellow family into the understanding that we three have. And there will be many listeners out listening to us now who will also have this understanding.
Yes. And those people out there listening, just because David and I are talking about Europe, it doesn't mean it couldn't happen in Canada too.
Well,
in the United States, over 36 municipalities at the local level have brought in rights of nature. So cities like Santa Monica and Pittsburgh have in their bylaws that the ecosystems and species have rights, tangible rights that can be enforced in court by the people living in that town. Mm-hmm. So, they can do it across the border down in Santa Monica. Yeah. Why couldn't they do it in Quebec? Quebec's also got some nice laws, like Brian said. Yeah. We can get the movement, get people to start to think in this way.
There's more than one way to fix this problem, and I think, like you say, if you get the political system on board, you can call it whatever you want. I mean, the environmental laws in Quebec are very good. We have anti-fracking laws in Quebec. We have these laws that protect the shoreline of lakes. These are tremendous laws because they're protecting basically habitat. I was reading some nonsense about making animals sentient beings, as if that matters. What matters is making the habitat, protecting the habitat, because these laws to make animals sentient beings are really just an arm in the police state to fine people for being cruel to animals, when really the biggest cruelty is the fact that we're destroying the habitat of animals.
Absolutely, and this is why we say ecosystems have rights.
Yeah.
As a whole. Yeah.
But they have to be protected, and we have to decide how much like in Bhutan, they have a law saying you can only exploit 40% of the forest. We have to come up with some strict limitations and live by them.
That's true. That's true. Well, I guess, what we are doing, not only in Europe, you also have over there in America, you have the headquarters of the Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature down in California with Robin Milan. And if you do a Google search on the Global Alliance for the Rights of Nature, then any of our listeners then can start to look and see it and begin to connect a little bit or connect a lot.
There's something I want to come back on there, Brian, when you mentioned about, 40% of the forest being protected. Now, there's been a lot of research.
60%. 60% protected,
about, 60% is protected. Okay, that's a lot better. Because there is research out there. Believe it or not, the conservation standard is 15%, 15. That's what our current system believes is necessary for life on Earth to survive, that nature, 15% is preserved. But scientists have been doing studies, and there's a project run by the WILD organization called Nature Needs Half, which shows that we need somewhere between like 50 to 75% of nature thriving in order to have a viable world. So,
Oh, I totally agree.
yeah, so just to add to what you were saying there, Brian, it's so important. And with rights of nature, what we're doing is we're rolling out the highest protection to nature, which is in the form of rights. And it's a blanket protection. So instead of saying nature's unprotected and we're going to carve out limitations and protections, and we're always going to be reactively carving them out, which is the case in pretty much most places, we're saying that we're going to put the blanket protection on nature and we're going to carve out the level of human activity that is acceptable to maintain the balance. And that's, it's a lot less reactive and it's a lot more proactive, because it then forces us to start looking at how we can meet our needs in harmony with nature, and really in a way that doesn't compromise the needs of future generations, which is the official definition of sustainability. But actually, there is no legal framework for sustainability. We're suggesting that we create one.
Yeah. Hey, look, Mumta, I'm noticing we've got about 5 minutes before we close down, before we finish this interview. Can we wrap this up and give people, to give all you listening out there some way that you can follow what we're doing? Mumta, I haven't got the... Yes, over to you on that. I think this would be really nice, because we're having a really good talk. We've introduced a lot of interesting concepts and realities. You're with me totally. Well, that's great.
Yeah, great. So if you want to find out more about our work here in Europe, you can check us out on www.rightsofnature.eu. Also, our Facebook page, Rights of Nature Europe. You can catch up with Alex's bike ride and the trials and tribulations and the journey of spreading awareness on there.
You'll be with me for all this winter as well, so we'll be communicating.
Hi. Hello. I have no sound here.
Hello.
Welcome back to I'm Nature. I'm your host, Brian Porter. And now I have two guests for the second half of the show. David Dene is still with us, and James McCanney's back for another stint, for another hour. James, how you doing?
Very good. Hi, Brian. Hi, David.
Hi, James. How are you? You're good. Glad to hear that.
Very good. Yes.
Well, I'm glad I got both of you, David, so you can hear us now.
I've put you on my smartphone and got the Skype application working on the smartphone, and we're online.
Wow, you sound better than ever.
Wow, that's great. Well, I've just got up about an hour ago, and it's 5 o'clock in the morning here in southern Spain, and everything is well.
Awesome. Okay, guys, I just wanted to make sure I had you, and I just got to do my little spiel for the station. So hang on a sec. So, folks, I'm Nature is a show on a huge platform called Revolution Radio. The budget's about $2,500 a month. I just checked. We've raised $5 this month, which isn't enough, folks. We can't do. I mean, we basically do this on a nonprofit basis, but we do need your support. I usually recommend you purchase the archives for $5 a month. You get access to 80 different shows. All archived. You can download them. You can listen to them at your leisure whenever it makes sense for you. I have my favorite shows that I usually download weekly, and I pick them up too. So it's a great way to get educated, and it's also a great way to help Revolution Radio. So I hope you'll download the archives, or at least try to budget $5 a month to support Revolution Radio, the best place on the planet to get the real news of what's really happening and the real solutions. Okay, so let's get back to my special guests, James McCanney and David Dene. So, David, my first question goes out to you, bud, because you're my eco village hero. got that great place going over there in Spain. David's coming all the way from Spain, and right now it's a crisp 5 in the morning. Is that true, David?
Yeah, that's it. That's it. It's actually quite warm out here. It must be about 15 degrees. I guess you work in Fahrenheit, yeah? Or do you work in centigrade?
We work, in Canada, we're centigrade. The U.S. is the only country that still uses Fahrenheit, as far as I know.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, no, we're about, say, 14, 15 degrees centigrade. Really, really quite warm. Quite nice, yeah. No problems.
Yeah. Yeah, and but I'm always amazed that you're so, you're an early bird. But you went on a little trip last week. Why don't you share that with the listener why you went to France?
Yeah, I've just been up to France to visit my family. I have a couple of nephews. One who lives in France. He's involved in how should we say recycling buildings. So when someone wants to have an old building knocked down for some reason, then my nephew John will go in with his gear, and he'll remove the roof beams, the tiles, floors, furnitures, whatever. And the last job, the owners of the property said, "Well, look, John, if you pay for the demolition, then you can take everything which is inside the house." And so, huge old oak roof beams. A couple of $1,000, kind of a beam. It's a worthwhile job. Very hard work. John is now 40 with 3 children, then looking to move more into a consultancy role. He's good at managing things, and so he'd look at more managing restorations, doing what he really likes doing, which is making furniture. He's an excellent designer, got a degree in engineering, was building websites over in London, had clients such as Siemens and so on. Found that pretty unsatisfactory, came over here to Spain, built his first house here, helped me build my second house here, went to France, set up his business, got 2 lovely houses over there. So that's one nephew. My other nephew teaches pilots to fly airplanes. So he's teaching commercial jet pilots to fly, like EasyJet and Ryanair and other companies. So they're both successful folk. They both got children, and it was the first time for a long time that we've managed to get together as that small part of our family all in one place at the same time. It was over Halloween. People in France, very friendly. There's more disposable income in France than there is here, and that was interesting to observe. Here in Spain, we're deeply in this austerity, governmental austerity policy, which is removing the disposable income from people's pockets. A family here, like a whole family, mother, father, children, they get from the government, if they're unemployed, 420 euros a month. Now that in American dollars would be, it's actually almost equal, say 450 US dollars per month for a family to survive. Now that's pretty bad, eh? So with that's meaning that there's very little disposable money in people's pockets. So in this area where I'm living, the shops just don't have the products which I was seeing up there in France, where there is disposable income. What the situation in France is that it's not so easy to speculate on property. So property prices have remained at reasonable levels. So when a young couple go buy a house, they can afford to pay the mortgage. The mortgage, that's a word you use in America, of course. And they're not strapped for cash the same way that we're strapped for cash in Spain, where we went through a housing boom. Houses became incredibly expensive. People took out loans, and they couldn't afford to pay the loans. And the government are supporting the banks who actually issued the loans, because if the banks fall, then the whole of the security system falls. I mean, the system starts to crash and burn. So I see the difference between here, where there's not very much disposable income, and France, where there's a feeling of, compared to here, a feeling of affluence, of enough, and the people are happy. English, French, Spanish, Italian. I see people mixing very easily. A very nice interchange of language. I saw most of the people who were not of Spanish or French origin, speaking some French, and a very nice. I felt it a very nice society. I was in kind of middle France, really, just up from Toulouse. We come up from the Spanish border about 200 or 300 kilometers. Middle to South France is where I was.
Dave,
And really nice experience.
Dave, didn't just trying to get more on track in
Yeah.
terms of the theme of the show. Did you not
Yeah, of
meet with an Indigenous leader trying to create an international framework for Indigenous action?
Yeah, there's another platform which I'm working on, and I've been in touch with friends in Brazil, where there's a platform building to bring the indigenous voice of the many tribes, nationalities in Brazil, to create a bridge between the people living in the forests and us. I use that us word as people who are not living in the forests, and the us are looking for more natural resources to produce the products which our government said that we need to buy so that we have a greater gross domestic product. You know the idea? The government says buy the product, our GDP is better, our country is doing better, we can borrow more money from another country, and aren't we great? So what we're doing, what this organization is doing, and I just haven't got its name right in front of me, and my computer's a bit down, but never mind. They have on their books over 300 indigenous tribes. What I'm looking
300 in Brazil alone, or is that worldwide?
No, that's just in Brazil. When we're talking about indigenous peoples, I think we may be looking at maybe 2,000 or 3,000 tribes around the planet. Looking at South America, we've got Brazil, which of course is an enormous country. We've got Peru, then we've got Bolivia, we've got Chile, we've got Ecuador, Colombia, Venezuela. Yeah, it's a monster country, and that's Latin America. So say we've got 1,000 tribes in Latin America. That's kind of interesting. So now I've personally got a contact into this organization working with over 300 tribes. We're also contacted in with Tom Goldtooth up there in North America, where you guys are. He has a tremendous following. It was like working with the Rise Up organization, which was quite prominent a year or two ago. So it looks on the Latin America and on the North America side, if we get this spark to spark and create a bit of a fire, we can have a very widespread across an amazingly large number of indigenous peoples over the Americas. Over here in Europe, we do have indigenous peoples. They tend to be more up in the north, as we would say indigenous. And on the other way of looking at that is that here we are in a small eco village here in southeastern Spain, and actually we fit the criteria of indigenous people because we're not relying on the state of Spain to look after us. Actually, we were, because we were under the impression that we had protections because we're living in a parque natural, which means a natural park, with European Union protections for wildlife, habitat, and birds. And these are special protections. And having investigated them, because we are under threat of being dried out because of industrial agriculture, because of this threat and this reality, I've approached the European Union, and we've approached national government. The national government really plays the prevarication game. So we get the wrong forms and we have to reapply, and we threaten the national government and the Department of the Environment with international conventions, and it all takes time.
Yeah.
So we are the
Okay.
indigenous people.
Dave,
Yeah.
I love you and I love this effort you're going on, but I wanted to stick on the issue of this indigenous collective that you're trying to you're involved in. Who is the guy
Okay.
in North America? Who's the contact?
Well, we have on our list of contacts. We have Tom Goldtooth.
That's it.
Now, I met him about 18 months ago. We had breakfast together in Quito, in Ecuador. At that time, I was attending the World Summit Conference on the Rights of Nature, and we had leaders from all over the planet who were really pushing this rights of nature, and we were looking at a group of 70 people from all over the world. What are we going to do? How are we going to get an understanding amongst the whole population of our planet that in order to survive, and not only survive but thrive and be happy and lead lives which are going to be like good and fun and great, what we need to do is to have enshrined in agreements, and laws are agreements, in agreements, rights for nature. Because if we don't give nature rights in the same way as we gave slaves rights first over there in America, then we gave women rights. We're still medieval when it comes to nature. And I use the word medieval, and I think, well, isn't it medieval to have slaves? There's still slaves in Saudi Arabia. It's unbelievable, but it's true. We need to break out of this human stuckness where we seem to still be behaving like children in a way. We fight each other, like siblings, like brothers and sisters who punch each other when they're kids, and then when they grow up they say, well, let's work together. It feels like the human race is still in a kind of movement between teenager and adult, and we've really got to pull it together and become adults and stop fighting each other. I went a bit off track there, Brian. Can you steer me back on course?
Actually, no, you went to a good place. It's
okay.
Actually, what we're all dealing with is the money god. We traded God for money, and we made a huge mistake. And
it's a really difficult one, Brian. It's really so difficult because
God is nature to many people, but traded, or you could say we sold nature for God, and it's just for money, and that was a huge mistake. And now we're starting to realize that it's priceless, and we cannot value it. So we have to find another way of looking at nature as being number one, and we're number two. We're subordinate to nature's needs, and that's kind of what's coming. I think a very simple understanding is developing. I'm not sure if people have realized the extent to which it's hard to get away from the money god. What do you think about that, James? What's your opinion on the money god and the fact that we monetize everything?
Well, there again, the current trend in political leadership is trying to make people pay for the so-called benefit of the earth, the carbon tax and things like that. So it's like punishing the people for the damage being done to Earth, and quite the opposite. If really, literally, all the people, the 7 billion people in the world, lived within ecological means, there'd be plenty for everybody. Actually, the population would start to decrease naturally, and we would come into a bound of living with nature. But the problem is. The problem is you've got China, you've got India, the big population centers of the world all want to become like the so-called modern West, where they all have, a two-car garage, and I made the point, there's not enough trees in the world for China to have toilet paper, let alone have, newspapers and automobiles and matchstick houses with beautiful lawns. It's not going to happen. So, I mean, you have to step back. There has to be world management on a logical basis, but you can't put it into the hands of the globalists who want to tax you more further, drive you further down this rabbit hole because of the use of resources. We have
Yeah,
this economic model
yeah.
that unbridled use of resources, and they, what do they talk about? The jobless rate and the economy, and
Oh, yeah.
everybody's got to work 2 jobs to make ends meet, and the
But we haven't got the
austerity
jobs to
and
work here. Yeah, I mean,
I know, but
we're really stuck, James, because we haven't got the ability for people that is not work. Where 60% of the youth from university has no job, and
no, I
30%.
understand that, but we have to look in a different look in a different vein.
Different paradigm, I think. We've got completely
Absolutely,
shifted it. Yeah.
this idea of a 40-hour-a-week job where you go and work for a company and eventually get retirement after 30 years, that's broken. Doesn't work
20
anymore.
years is enough. I mean, 20 years. 20. I used to work 20 hours a week. I was working in Austria, in the mountains of Austria, a health practitioner, deep tissue body work on the style of Ida Rolf, taught by Joseph Heller of the Heller work, deep tissue body work. And I would work for 20 hours a week, hands-on with people's bodies. Now, that was enough of intense work. That's like 20 hours a week of unconditional love for my clients. More than that, then we start to lose, and that level with a good remuneration. That for me was 5.5 years of interesting, satisfactory, good work, and being self-employed. That was great, and I would advocate for 20 hours a week as the working week. I would advocate here I'm on one. I would advocate, as is happening in Utrecht, and there's another town in France where the town is giving everybody a working enough money, giving everybody, not just a few people, giving everybody enough money to be able to be free, to have enough food to pay the bills. Then it's actually about 900 euros a month is given to every citizen.
Well, see, that's the purpose. David, that's the original concept of money in the United States. When the American Revolution occurred, they got rid of the English banking system, and Congress was designed to coin the money. In other words, they would create enough money so that the people would live comfortably. By the year 1913, the European Bank was back, in the night before Christmas, 1913, they voted in the Federal Reserve Act, which we're still living under this loaning or borrowing money from the European banking system, and then having more debt than all the money in the world.
Well, James, absurd. I mean, they printed $17 trillion. And you know how much $1 trillion is? After the 2008 crisis, the Federal Reserve, it came out after 2 or 3 years after, printed $17 trillion, distributed that money around the world banks in order to maintain our current system. I've just got a little fact here I'd like to put, because it's really quite mind-blowing. In 2008, there was just over $300 trillion going around in what are called derivatives. That's all the loans chopped into little tiny parts and then put out again to create more interest. 2008. Now in 2015, we have close to $700 trillion circulating the world in derivatives. And if that's not madness, I'd look for another description. That is definitely madness. It's the road to an eventual
derivatives. Those derivatives are then based on other loans, which are based on other loans. It's just like a giant circle, and I've heard it stated that there is no way in the world that you could have accountability for the money that's out there. Nobody even knows. Nobody even has an idea.
Yeah.
Daily, the international exchange rates change daily, and I say between a given exchange rate, but say between the United States and the euro. That'll change 20 times in a day, and every time it changes, there are people that make money off of that. There's no value there. How can you make money because the currency changes? I mean,
well, I totally agree with you. In all the old religious texts, including Christianity, usury or interest was against the the religion, the code of conduct of people. Islam still disallows interest in its banks. Well, you can see what we in the West did. We didn't follow what was ancient sense, really ancient sense, that never ever give money its own power, or else we're doomed. We didn't follow those dictates, and we are on the edge of a crash, James. I'm sure of it. It's not a question of if; it is for certain a question of when.
Absolutely. In the ancient texts, there were two terms. There was the beneficiary, was the person who received the loan, and the benefactor was the person who gave the loan. And the term benefit is a derivative of that, is the base word. Now we have mortgage and amortization schedule. And those are derived from the Latin word to kill.
It
Basically.
does.
And so that's what it's designed to do. It's to kill you financially. And it's right in the terms, and people don't realize when they say mortgage or amortization schedule, it's designed to kill you financially, and that's what it does. So we have to get at the root of the problem, and then unless we do that, then we're not going to cure any other problems. So we have to get at the root problem, which is the international banking community, and literally we got to get rid of them.
I think it was in a dangerous situation. Back in 2008, there was like that one bank, Lehman Brothers, which is quite a key figure. And there's about, if we look at the analysis of where the money is on the planet, and we look at the companies which are most involved and in the web and kind of controlling the web of money, we find that the top 46 institutions, businesses, include most of the banks. Now, if one of those goes out, then there's not enough cash in the system to rebalance the system. And that's what happened when Lehman Brothers went. The repercussions of one big player mean that all those minus figures become not possible to service, if that's the word, service, to pay those minus numbers. It's going to happen again, James. But Greece was forced into taking this 95 or 75 billion loan.
They
rather
voted
than
against it. They actually voted against it, and the politicians came in and said, "No, you got to take it."
Well, it was the European Union. It was the European Central Bank. It was the International Monetary Fund said, no, this is not a good idea. They were ones speaking for common sense, but the rest of the financial institutions in Europe could see that if Greece moved out, the knock-on effect of the loans which Greece has outstanding in other European countries would knock those other European countries off their pedestals. So if Greece was to have left the euro, there's a strong possibility that would have started a mega collapse of the European countries and a breakup of the European Union monetary system. And so they were literally forced.
That's probably the best thing that could have happened to them. You look at a country like Iceland, which went through that. They actually arrested the bankers and put them in prison.
I know, what a good idea.
What a good idea.
They created their own monetary system. They're now completely energy self-dependent. They live completely on renewable energy, and they have one of the strongest economies in the world. It's really, and they have dire predictions for those people. Yeah. But, this is what happens when you get rid of the banks.
Well, it is. And of course, something that's happening in Canada. There's actually a lawsuit going forward. A guy named Rocco Galati. He's probably the only honest lawyer in Canada. He goes after the government through the Constitution all the time. And we have a constitutional democracy in Canada, which is quite unique. And we actually have the only legally set up public bank. But what the public bank did is they decided to get into the Bank of International Settlements in 1974 and because of that, we had to loan money from the private banks to fund government programs. Whereas prior to that, our deficit was low because the Bank of Canada made direct interest-free loans to the government. and they just had to pay back the principal without interest, which is the way the system
which is
should.
great.
So since
I mean,
all the figures show this. So this guy Rocco Galati, and it's actually in the Bank Act that the bank is supposed to loan money to the government for free. Not to,
Yeah.
It doesn't say they're not supposed to go to the BIS because the BIS didn't exist back when the Bank of Canada was set up. So we have a very strong legal case, and we're hoping that he'll win this case, and we can get back to having a truly public bank that will lend money directly to the government interest free. And
that would be great, James.
present debt, but I mean that's the
Yeah.
solution. I mean that's one way around it. I like the idea of an organic currency that would eventually supplant, or at least run in synchronous with the fiat currency. I think if people want to gamble with their money, that's really what a fiat currency is. It's a gamble. The people like to gamble. I'm not against people having fun gambling, trying to make money in the stock market, but we should have a currency that creates recreates the planet, creates green energy sources, puts a greenhouse in every block. I mean, creates self-sustaining communities. Because the model that we're supposed to live by is the smallest beautiful model, and this is why I love David Dene so much and James McCanney so much, because you both live by the smallest beautiful model. You create all your needs, meet all your needs locally, and this is the real solution to everything.
Well, we haven't got around to creating all our needs, James. I mean, I noticed that here where I am, I've had to invest reasonable sum of money in infrastructure, and I would say probably over the 20 years about $250,000, maybe a little bit more.
But you're off the grid.
Yeah, but this has enabled me to be off the grid. And when I look at the price of houses in all over Europe, almost all over Europe, 250,000 isn't really a huge amount. But if we're living gently, and I'm a young person, say I'm 20 years old, where on earth am I going to get that money from? So what I think, an idea, let's put this as an idea, is when governments actually support their citizens in becoming self-sufficient in energy and self-sufficient in food supply, and break away from the concept of world markets to bring up within the countries themselves a sustainable food supply. For instance, an example would be Japan.
That should be the goal of every country, to have their own food supply.
Yeah. I mean, Japan used to supply all its own rice. World market comes along, Japan now imports rice. So it's no longer the same sustainable in its food supply. And when we lose...
But they probably export rice. I bet Japan exports rice.
Yeah, I mean, our example, or an example, was in England in the Second World War, when the Germans were successfully torpedoing and bombing the ships which were bringing in supplies to England. So Sir Winston Churchill said, guys, what we must do is to dig for victory. We need to dig our front lawns, dig our gardens. We need to plant food. We need to become self-sufficient in our food supply, because if not, we're going to starve. And that was called Dig for Victory. And Sir Winston Churchill was one of those leaders who could come up with a new idea, put it across to his population and say, guys, it's up to you. You take responsibility, you grow food, and we as a nation will survive. And we are really short leaders.
In the United States, they called it a victory garden, but it was the same idea.
That's it. And, Rockefeller, Roosevelt, for instance, what an amazing man he was, because he said what he believed, and Sir Winston Churchill said what he believed. And it's like, I am elected by you, the people of this country, and this is what I believe. And it's not about it was not about what it is about today. Then it was about survival of the people, the well-being of the people. Today, it's about the survival of the economy and the well-being of the economy. And it's got into numbers, and it's got out of the reality of who we are as human beings, and how we as human beings require and demand happiness. And happiness does not come from being rich. It comes from feeling okay and feeling unpressured about money, so that we can be free to be creative beings. And that's we're achieving that here in the village. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, but look at the evening news. It's the stock
Okay.
market, it's the economy, it's the downturn, it's the housing market, it's all of these things related to banking. And
Yeah.
so they've got the people running around like crazy, thinking that all of these things are important. When
Yeah.
in the United States, you're talking about housing prices. Let's take a
Yeah.
$250,000 house, average house in a city. 25 years ago, that same house was sold for $35,000.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the college education, when I went to college, my tuition was $1,200 a year. Now,
And
annual college tuition is $45,000 to $60,000 a year. And the reason that is because the colleges realized that mom and dad could put a second mortgage on their house and pay for kids' education. So the prices went way up. Uh,
it's
you know, it's
yeah,
insane.
really,
Did you
really
guys know they're
simple.
having riots in England over the cost of education? Students are demanding free education in university.
I'd missed that one, James. Well, good on them, I'd say. Good
Yeah,
on them
in
because
fact, quite yeah, quite violent riots. I mean, they're pissed off.
Well,
Why
you
would
get
you
the
done
want to
and then
pay
you
for
don't have a job.
education when there's no job at the other end?
Oh,
well
absolutely. The
that
universities have to
yeah,
be monitoring and providing a service so that when you get done, there's some value there, not just
yeah,
a $100,000 bank loan.
and basically at the moment there's not that much value, I believe, not that much value coming out of the universities in the terms of enabling people to live happy and fulfilled lives. People
Oh,
go to
exactly.
university and okay, get some education, but what about the practical stuff? I've been here now 26 years and I've watched generation of young people coming through, and this generation are not good with skills of their hands. Plumbing, electricity, gardening, digging, mending and fixing, because it looks to me now, certainly in England, that in order to fix a boiler or fix some water, the person has to have a little card with a certificate saying, "My name's David Dene, and I am licensed to climb a ladder." Now, if I haven't got my license to climb a ladder, then I could be in breach of health and safety regulations. So the young people are not getting the experience of hands-on working with the functionality of life. It's always left
Yeah,
to somebody else.
they
Not
don't even
good.
know how to fill out a checkbook. They're not taught anything in school, in all
Yeah.
the way through grade school. They really
And
don't
these,
teach them anything.
yeah, and these are wonderful people. These are people with all the gifts of God that we all have, and they're being through the educational process, I believe, pushed into this idea: you're going to be a consumer. You're going to help our gross domestic product, and we as government are going to make sure that that's the way it works. And the universities are funded by Nestle, Monsanto, or whatever. The preschool books, I read with Nestle adverts, for instance, the Coca-Cola's selling, their products in the school corridors. It's wherever we look, we're being taken over by commercial interests to the deficit of who we are as human beings. And within the Eco Village network, we're human beings because we are reliable on our own resources to maintain our own resources, to maintain our infrastructures. And if we don't continue to exist as an eco village. So it's a kind of anarchist society where anarchism equals an immense level of responsibility, which is not accepted in the capitalist framework of life. In that framework, Big Daddy is going to look after us. And Big Daddy at the moment is using the techniques that Aldous Huxley and George Orwell talked about, which is to create a sense of fear in the people. And we, the government, Big Daddy, we are going to look after you. You're on orange alert today. Big Daddy is watching. I don't agree with it. I think it's all wrong.
Yeah,
What do you think?
Obama has said in speeches, he said, big government is the only one that can manage people. In other
Well,
words, people are not capable. His belief is that people are not capable of managing their own affairs. And this is when he was talking about healthcare. He said, and the irony is The government has absolutely no experience in healthcare at all, and anything they ever touch turns to you know what.
SH1T we call it.
Yes, and there's an example of a guy who has no knowledge of anything, and we have that a lot in the United States, I imagine all over the world. People who think they're going to run something and they don't know anything. So they're out there doing stuff. They're implementing things, but it has, generally has a completely negative effect on what they're trying to or pretending to accomplish. But literally, whether it's science, whether it's medicine or health, everything that the government touches turns into a big expensive debt. And in the case of health, all of this money goes to the pharmaceutical companies and the medical industry, and the poor guy going to the doctor can't, waits in a line of, 80 people long now to get in, and there's no equipment available. It's insane. So it's gone from a system that worked to a system that will never ever work again.
A very, very, very dangerous situation. It was in the 1920s when Anira Bevin got together and we created in England a national health system. In Canada, you have a brilliant national health system. It's falling apart.
To be honest with you, David, it functions okay. I wouldn't say it's brilliant. If you get an operation, you usually have to wait 2 or 3 years now.
Oh, really?
Unless it's life-threatening. I mean, if you have a heart attack, they'll get you in right away. But there's a triage system. It's broken. It's mainly because of the unnecessary government bureaucracy, and it's really not what it was when it first came out. It used to be a lot better 20 years ago. I say in my lexicon of fixing things, big is bad. Anything big is bad. Yeah. Everything has to be decentralized. Healthcare, everything. Every community should have a doctor, a nurse. That's about all you need. Because if you start eating good food, drinking structured water, you're not going to get sick very often. You're not going to get cancer. You're not going to have all these health problems. I mean, everything gets back to the fact that we're poisoning the food, the land, and the air. And this is what's creating all the sickness. And then we create a huge system to meet this huge need. And it's just, it's unsustainable. And I see the writing on the wall. Everything's going to fall apart. I don't know what, tomorrow or the next day. It doesn't really matter. The solution has always been the same. We're a pack animal. We're meant to live in small, close-knit groups, self-sustaining groups of people. This, to me, is the solution.
It does seem to work. It seems that the eco-village community around Europe goes from strength to strength. I was involved when this first started about 20 years ago, and I was involved talking with people in Findhorn, and it was a Canadian, Robert Jordan maybe, who brought this idea together and formed the first global eco-village network. Then there was a meeting in Findhorn in Scotland, one of the oldest eco-communities in Europe, and they took on the coordination of the eco-village network throughout Europe, and now strength to strength from Findhorn, it's the hub of information for the global eco-village network, which over the last 20 years has got bigger and bigger, with people doing exactly what we're talking about, coming together and saying, hey, we are responsible for our lives. Nature supports us. Let's support nature. Let's live naturally. And within this eco-village network, we have free thinkers. And free thinkers are the ones which are going to basically change the world, I guess. When we are given freedom, we're given the freedom from the burden of financial debt. We then have room to open our eyes and see what's happening. And an example of that would be Esalen, out there on the west coast of America in the 60s, where people had disposable income, therefore could look and see what it is to be a human being. And that's where the work that I was doing in Austria, in Kitzbühel, in the mountains, it came from Esalen. It came from that point out there in the United States of America where people had disposable income and they could look and see what is it to be a fulfilled human being. The deep tissue bodywork put together by Ida Rolf and fine-tuned by Joseph Heller is about who we are as effective human beings, how we use our bodies, how the relationship between body and mind ties together. And our mantra was excellence with ease. And when we can achieve excellence with ease, we're being human beings. And that's what we need to see happen all over the world. Re-empower who we are as human beings.
Yeah.
And maybe in England, with the youth movement, with the students, there we have a point of change. There are far more young people on this planet than there are people of our age. So we were talking yesterday, we had a Rights of Nature meeting, looking at seeing, well, how do we change a paradigm of thought to bring to the awareness of everybody that we need to empower nature so that nature has its personhood, which is taking that personhood into an individual personhood in the same way that women were given rights, and prior to that women were owned by men. When women now have their rights, we see women taking their rightful place in society as the carers and looking after us of societies and families, with the vote, with their immense power being realized. Just to go a little bit on that one, here's a question. Are we men in our patriarchal society frightened of women? There's an open question. We need to embrace womanhood and say, you are the source of life, you know?
Well, I'd like to embrace the great feminine energy. Yeah.
Yes,
I think
definitely.
men and women. I think we got to be careful we don't create another avenue of separation. I think men and women both have male and female energy. It's balancing of the two that creates happy people and happy relationships.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yin and yang, yin and yang,
Yeah,
plus
it's
black,
a
white,
beautiful
you know.
thing. I mean, we're both connected because we both have the same energy, and we have a different role in terms of reproduction of the species. But I mean, we really are
Yeah.
one when we learn to balance off those two energies. But before we're running out of time here, folks, and I promised James that I'd let him talk about his new crowdfunding proposal that's going to be out any day now.
Great, let's go for it. Love to hear that.
Okay, well, there are, I'd say, 10 things that everybody needs on this life, and this is, for like David and myself, we've stepped off the merry-go-round and we're living a life that the way we should be living it, eating good food, have clean water, etc. But, we also want to live in the modern world. So that means transportation, communication, and the use of modern digital equipment, etc. But we have a problem. We have a giant problem in the world right now. And the spying that's gone on, it's gotten to the point now where Windows 10 coming out has the spying right into the operating system.
I know, it's so open.
Android has been affected also, and these are the major operating systems. These are the core programs that reside on your smartphone, tablet, personal computer, or desktop computer. And it's
Totally.
either the two big ones are Windows based, and they've also infiltrated Windows 7 and 8. Windows 10 is coming up in the December. Unless you have your automatic updates turned off on your Windows system, it will automatically load Windows 10 into your computer because people are not accepting it because they know it's full of NSA hooks in there for spying. So what I've done, being my background is in computer design and software and hardware, operating systems, encryption, and computer security. The crowdfunding campaign, I call it Windroids 11 OS. And the number 11 is because it comes after Windows 10. It's kind of a play off of that. Wind comes out of Windows and Droid comes out of Android. And so what this is it's a new operating system that will run on your smartphone, tablet, PC, or desktop computer. And it'll be a brand new operating system without any of the NSA spying you will have control if an application comes into your device or some kind of virus and tries to operate on your machine. It will block it. It will sort it out, and just like a virus in your body, it will get rid of it.
Yeah.
Applications will come through our sieve, and only applications will run on this device that are authorized. And so
Yeah.
this is for Wi-Fi based devices. I have not had a phone plan for a long time. I use strictly Wi-Fi. And
Ah,
but see, the problem is there's all kinds of solutions. Like they have a router plug-in. They say that will protect you against all kinds of activity. It will not, because the problem is right in the operating system on your smartphone, tablet, PC, etc. So
Is it
you've
going to be
got to.
encrypted, James? All the information?
I'm sorry, what?
Is it going to be encrypted?
No, no, there's no need to encrypt it. It's going to have a monitoring system built in, and you have to understand operating systems have gotten out of control, just like the government. They have all of these things that are going on in there that don't belong in an operating system.
Oh
An
yeah.
operating system is a central core program that manages your memory, manages your services, your data, etc. And there could be a virus in the memory chip in your computer. I mean, it could be in hardware. But what this will do is have a overall monitoring of all of the functions going on in your smartphone, tablet, PC, etc. So it will not allow, it will not allow foreign activity, and you will be aware of everything going on in your phone. It'll also make your phone work, or your tablet, whatever, work much faster, because you
yeah.
don't have all of this overhead. And then there will be an encryption layer. If we get enough funding, there will be an encryption layer so that nothing comes into your phone or out of your phone that is not encrypted. And it won't be, that's something I'm an expert in. People who donate more than $25 will get my ebook, Breaking RSA Codes for Fun and Profit, which talks about the security cyber industry, about the backdoor deals between government and industry, and how the NSA has corrupted the industry so that spying has become the norm. And so,
Yeah.
anyway, this is a project that I hope is well funded. It's going up on Indiegogo. It'll be there. I'm announcing at the actual opening on my show tomorrow night. So look on my webpage, jmccsci.com, in the next day or so. The links will be there. And if people give a donation, that's great, $5, $10, $25, whatever. But also click on Facebook. Up on the left-hand corner is a Facebook like. And so if you're in your Facebook account, it will send this link to this page to all of your Facebook friends, and then they can look at it and resend it out. And that's one of the biggest tools, is so that everybody quickly learns about this, because this is something that will affect everybody in the world, finally giving you your communication device back to you, the security back in your hands, not somebody else's. There won't be any more need for antivirus or anti-malware. That'll be something of the past, because right now in your device, it will prevent anything like that from happening.
Very nice, James. I mean, if our listeners take the time to read the agreements, for instance, by MSN Messenger, we can see that in those agreements we agree to allow MSN Messenger to open our audio and to open our video on our smartphones. And what we do
That's
is
correct.
we say yes, I agree. And there are many apps which are doing this, and they're not only is it the National Security Agency of America and the GCHQ of England. It's the commercial interests to collect the information from us so they can build the algorithm so that we can be bombarded with the advertising that we might succumb to.
That's absolutely correct.
Yeah,
Absolutely correct. And the hackers use those same hooks to get into
yeah,
your computer, etc. And the government doesn't do a thing about it, because they
well,
want their hook into your computer.
they love it. On the black phone, which is the most advanced phone at the moment, any app which is using those back doors comes up on the smartphone saying, okay, you are now open for audio from this app. Do you want this or not? The conversations around the black phone are running at the moment that, okay, governments use them, but it's probably going to be industry which is going to try and close that down because it's going to seal off their source of information about us. And so we've got two very powerful factors here. We've got government spying, and we've got the monster, which is the commercial interests of the companies which are using our information to create these personalities, these algorithms of who we are, and then invading our privacy.
Right. And the problem with the black phone is that the other guy that you're talking to needs a black phone too. What I'm going to do is open this up to anybody that has a smartphone or tablet. Those are the big ones today. Not many people sit down at the PC anymore, etc. It's all smartphone and tablet. So those are the big ones. And that's why I picked Windows and Android. Those are the big platforms. And it'll look and act just like your Android or Windows system, except it won't have any of the hooks for spying, for any of that.
James, is it going to delete the present system? Is it going to delete it and replace it?
Absolutely.